light another lamp unless it continues to burn its own flame. The teacher who has come to the end of his subject, who has no living traffic with his knowledge, but merely repeats his lesson to his students, can only load their minds. He cannot quicken them. With these words of Sri Rabindranath Tagore, I, Dr. Neetu Kataria, Associate Professor, Department of Physics, Sri Vaishnav Institute of Science, welcome you all on the occasion of inauguration ceremony of 1 week online faculty development program on present and future of renewable energy sources from laboratory to industry. It is indeed a privilege to have such distinguished personalities over here. I welcome our chief guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Pradeep Chandra Pant, former Director, MNRE Government of India, Honorable Vice Chancellor SWV, Dr. Upinder Dhar sir, Director, Sri Vaishnav Institute of Science, Dr. K. Guru Prasad sir, Head Department of Physics, Dr. Uttam Sharma sir, resource persons, my esteemed colleagues, and dear participants. Foremost, I request all the dignitaries and audience to join traditional auspicious lamp lighting ceremony and Saraswati Vandana as a tribute to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge virtually. Technical team, please proceed.
सद्गमया तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcoming the guest is a part of code of conduct for the Indian culture. I request our technical team to present virtual bouquet on behalf of Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, Director sir, and our head of the department to our chief guest, Dr. Pradeep Chandra Pant sir. Technical team, please proceed.
ठीक है मैडम, आगे चलिए.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our Director, Sri Vaishnav Institute of Science, Dr. K. Guru Prasad sir, to welcome our guest by his warm words and gesture. Over to.
Thank you, madam. On behalf of the Vaishnav Institute of Science, I welcome our guest speaker today, Dr. Pradeep Chandra Pant, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Upinder Dhar, Dr. Uttam Sharma, Head Department of Physics, staff members, students, and participants. It's a good time to think about the renewable energy sources, and this FDP is focused on renewable energy sources for the future. We also need to think that how did we exhaust our conventional energy sources that, or it is not totally exhausted, but it is in the verge of getting exhausted. Physics people mostly get concerned about converting the mass into energy. But when we think of the conventional energy sources, how did this mass accumulate at the first place? We need to go to the area of biology and chemistry. That it has taken millions of years to accumulate the conventional energy sources like coal and petrol, but we have exhausted that source in the last 200 years or so because of our extensive industrialization and also extensive transport facilities which we have created in this world. So now it is time to think about the alternative energy sources and how we can also replenish the sources which we have lost at a great rate in the last 2 centuries. Now, both these things require an interdisciplinary approach because there is a lot of mass still available, particularly the biological mass, which can be converted into energy with innovative methods. And these methods are being worked out now and in research, and some of those methods are already in practice to convert the biomass, which is otherwise not usable except as a source of energy. And also, there is more and more studies, particularly for the production of hydrogen as a source of energy. There are several studies on the culture of organisms that can release hydrogen, which can be used as a source of energy. So I look forward to this series of talks by experts on the future of renewable energy, and I'm sure it will be informative to all the participants, and we will be educated better at the end of this series. With these words, I welcome you all to this FDP arranged by the Department of Physics of Sri Vaishnav Institute of Science. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. To express our affection and reverence to one and all present over here, the devices working on the renewable energy sources are the need of the hour. I request the coordinator of this FDP, Dr. Amit Saxena, sir, to brief the theme of this FDP. Dr. Amit Saxena, sir.
Thank you very much. As directors has mentioned that renewable energy is one of the important parameters for farming science. As we all knew that energy requirement is essential for scientific, technological, and industrial development. To date, we supply this energy from conventional energy sources like coal, oil, etc., as mentioned by the directors. But all these traditional sources of energy are being exhausted surprisingly fast. So we have to think more about the possibilities of natural energy sources like solar cells, capacitors, or rechargeable batteries, or biopolymer-based batteries. Therefore, this FDP is meant to provide a more in-depth understanding of renewable energy sources and their industrial applications. Here we have a unique combination of experts from academics and industries. I'm highly thankful to Award Solution Private Limited for collaborating with us for this FDP. During this FDP, we'll get detailed information about the journey of renewable energy in India, in particular, the use of plastic-based energy devices, its future, and transformation of research from laboratory to industries. During the FDP, you all will also learn how to read your electricity bill accurately. You will also get an idea about solar panel for your houses and how this panel can reduce your electricity bill. You will also get in-depth information about electric vehicles and use of batteries for EVs. So I hope this FDP will give you a great learning about research and possible technical applications for the next generation of energy. With all these words, I would like to welcome you all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Upinder Dhar, sir, to address the August gathering. Over to sir.
Or distinguished speaker for the day, Dr. Pant, Dean Science, Dr. Guru Prasad, all other colleagues, Dr. Uttam Sharma, head of the Department of Physics, and my dear friends. At the outset, I would like to join Dr. K.N. Guru Prasad in extending a very warm welcome to all of you to this faculty development program. As we know, faculty development has now become part and parcel of the education system everywhere. Because in National Education Policy 2020, there is a specific stress on continuous faculty development. Faculty development has been happening in the past as well. But that it used to be in those days, earlier, it used to be an add-on. Well, we may organize, we may not organize. We may nominate a faculty, we may not know. But with this NEP 2020, it is essential. It has become an integral part of the education system. We have to, in any way, see to it that there is continuous development of the faculty, and that can happen. One of the ways of making it possible is by organizing faculty development programs and inviting people of eminence, those who have done outstanding work in their chosen fields. As all of us know, that in 2015, United Nations set up 17 goals, what we call SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. You see, all over the world, the concern is for survival in the future. Concern is for whether we are really going to leave this planet livable for the next generation and the generations to come or not. That's why these 17 sustainable development goals have been set with a target of achieving these goals by 2030. Because in 2015, when these goals were set up, a period of 15 years was given. You see, one of the important areas is environment. How to control the pollution, how to have the efficient sources of energy. And as we know, renewable energy is one of such sources, which is more efficient, more clean in comparison to the traditional sources of energy. So we are very happy that today we have Dr. Pant with us. And after his session, there will be series of lectures by the experts, and we will get to know more about the future of energy sources, particularly in terms of renewable energy. I'm confident that all the faculty members will take keen interest in these sessions with a target to learn and understand, because as I said in the beginning, now it is no add-on. Now it is integral part of the system. One has to learn. One has to keep on learning. One has to keep on unlearning and then relearning. That is a must. We have to forget perhaps about something which was being done earlier, and we have to learn more about what we are going to do in the future. So those skills, besides knowledge, skills are very important. Because again, this national education policy very clearly says now skill development cannot be an add-on. It has to be integral part of the education system. Therefore, particularly in science, skill development is necessary. We have to impart skills to the students, and that can happen in the laboratory. There are many skills which can be imparted in the field. So with these words, I welcome Dr. Pradeep Chandra Pant once again, and it will be a delight to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your words of wisdom. You are the constant force for us that which make us to do again to achieve the milestones. Our chief guest, Dr. Pradeep Chandra Pant, has played a very important role in the journey of renewable energy resources in India. I request co-coordinator of the FDP, Dr. Pragya Palod, to please share some highlights of his achievements. Over to Palod.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Dr. P.C. Pant has been active in the field of renewable energy for about 36 years. He has developed and implemented and integrated the rural energy plans for many places in Uttar Pradesh as a project officer, Non-Conventional Energy Development Agency, Uttar Pradesh. He joined Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, that is MNRE, in 1988 and superannuated from the ministry in 2020. He had been associated with monitoring of various renewable energy projects in the states of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. He had been in leading roles in many international cooperation activities of the ministry, such as IDA credit line and GF grant, etc. Dr. Pant was associated with National Institute of Solar Energy and established a state-of-art battery test facility and solar photovoltaic system design facility at the center during his tenure. He was director in charge of the Global Renewable Energy Meet and Expo organized in 2018. He had been in leading roles during preparing the roadmaps for hydrogen fuel, biofuel, geothermal, and tidal energy activities of the ministries. He is in the board of studies of various institutes in India running the courses related to renewable energy. He is also a life member of Solar Energy Society of India, Indian Society of Lighting Engineers, Indian chapter of International Center of Theoretical Physics, Italy, and fellow of International Energy Foundation, Canada. Actually, it is very challenging to even highlight all of the achievements of Honorable Sir within this short span of time. So with this brief introduction, I hand over the session to our chief guest, Dr. Pant Sir, and I request all the candidates to note down their queries. So at the end of the session, you may interact with the sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for a nice introduction. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Upendra, Professor Guru Prasad, Dean, other distinguished faculty members. It's really an honor and privilege to be part of any education system, I should say, even after superannuation. I've been associated with a number of educational systems and also part of the FDPs being organized by various institutions. So when I was told by Dr. Amit to join this, I willingly did, because sometimes you get some new ideas through interaction with faculty and the students, and you keep on learning actually. So what I am going to do today is to take you to the renewable energy journey of India from 1973 to till date, and will also throw some light on where we are heading to, and particularly on the policy aspect. So I'm sharing my presentation. Just I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Okay. So as I mentioned, I'll just take you to the historical background and stages of development of renewable energy in India. And in fact, initially the renewable energy development was meant to meet the energy requirement, but ultimately the climate aspects have become the driving force for that. And that's why it's necessary to know something about the history of climate negotiations and how they have affected our journey, particularly in the energy sector, in the renewable energy sector. So from 20 gigawatt of National Solar Mission launched in 2008 to 175 gigawatt target given in 2015 to vying for achieving 500 gigawatt green energy by 2030. And the challenges which are associated with going for so much of capacity, that will be the focus of my presentation. I'll cut short some of the slides and will share this presentation to the participants. Okay. So ultimately, it's basically as Professor Guru Prasad had mentioned, that the conventional sources are going to exhaust. I do not know, we have been hearing this for so long, but yes, conventional are still in the mainstream. But the first oil shock actually, which happened in 1973, that awakened everybody, that our economy has become so fragile, and particularly in the hand of a few countries, that we have to think about energy independence. So in 1973, when the 400% increase of the oil prices by the OPEC, that particularly forced every country to think about use of renewable energy. At that time, we used to tell it, say it as non-conventional sources of energy. And as Professor Dhar has already mentioned, that these non-conventional energy sources have become now the integral part of our energy system now. And that's why the name from non-conventional has been shifted to renewable energy. So similarly, as internationally, we have been thinking about the renewable energy sources. In India, we also started our journey in 1973 by setting up a working group on power and energy in Department of Science and Technology. And at the same time, we set up a public sector undertaking named as Central Electronics Limited, which is very near to my residence here, which was focusing on development of solar PV technology, particularly in the manufacturing of solar PV modules, cells, modules, and systems. And in 1981, the Commission for Additional Sources of Energy was set up on the line of Atomic Energy Commission. And with the recommendation of the case, the Department of Non-Conventional Energy Sources was formed, which was upgraded to the ministry in 1992. And as I mentioned, it was renamed as Ministry of New and Renewable Energy in 1996. So the initial phase of our journey was practically focused on research and development and demonstration. And in the initial phases, there were a number of national programs which were launched to focus on social aspects like meeting the cooking, irrigation, lighting, heating requirements. So the programs like National Solar Photovoltaic Demonstration Program, National Program on Biogas Development, National Program on Improved Cook Stove, which was basically focusing on reducing the fuel wood consumption and making the inner environment of a house very clean by allowing the smoke to go out using the chimney, using a chimney. So at that time, the focus was to create the energy complex, which was ultimately upgraded to make an integrated approach for a particular area called Integrated Rural Energy Planning Process, which was being steered by Planning Commission initially, and in 1994 it was again shifted to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and simultaneously some special area demonstration programs were also launched. So that was the journey of 80s and early 90s. But during early 90s, one project, international project of which I was the part of negotiating team, the India Renewable Resources Development Project, was sanctioned by the International Development Agency, IDA credit line. That was the first IDA credit line which was given for renewable energy, and India was privileged to get it. And that actually started our journey towards commercialization of renewable energy sources. And parallelly, there were certain climate negotiations going on. The first climate, it was in 1972, the first International Environmental Summit in Stockholm, Sweden, was held, which led to creation of United Nations Environment Program and commitment to coordinate the global efforts to promote the sustainability and safeguard of natural environment. In fact, the Global Environment Facility was the part of the UNEP, and the India Renewable Resources Development Project, which I mentioned earlier, was also a component of that, was the grant component, which was coming from the Global Environment Facility. And in 1988, the Toronto, Canada Conference, in which the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, was established for the assessment of the science, impact, and response options of the climate change. And the first report of this IPCC was published in 1990, which paved the way for adopting UN Framework Convention for Climate Change by the UN General Assembly on 9th May 1992. So ultimately, it became a international program backed by United Nations. So in 1992, this UNCED, the first Earth Summit, was held in Rio de Janeiro, which committed all nations to take steps to mitigate the GHG emission, committed developed countries to assist developing countries in reducing the emission and coping with the climate impact. So in that, actually, ultimately, the countries were divided into various groups, the Annex 1, Annex 2, and Annex 3, or non-Annex countries, basically. The Annex 1 countries are basically the industrialized countries, which have ultimately, as part of the Kyoto Protocol, were given the specific target to reduce their carbon emission by 5% to the level of 1990. So that was basically the initial process. And in that process, actually, the developed countries started supporting the non-annex country, that is the developing countries, to set up various projects which were green in nature. So that's the history. There were different stages of that. The Berlin, the COP1, the Conference of Parties, what we say, the first COP1 was held in Berlin in 1995. The UNFCCC parties decided to accelerate climate effort by launching negotiations towards the first sub-agreement. And the Kyoto Protocol, which was adopted in COP3 in 1997, the binding GHG reduction target were set up for industrialized countries to be achieved by 2012. In Doha Convention in 2012, this duration was enhanced, extended up by 2020. And particularly in Copenhagen in COP15, during that period when the specific targets were given to the Annex 1 countries, the developed countries, they had started telling about that the fast growing economies like India, China, South Africa, Brazil, they have also been emitting a significant chunk of the carbon emission in the atmosphere, and therefore they should also have monitorable target. While the developing countries have the argument that it should be based on equity, means the share of per capita share of the carbon emission. And our carbon emission or any developing country's carbon emission per capita is quite low. Like the Canada have been using 51 units of electricity per day per person, while ours now have reached to 3 units. So there is no equity in that. And it's basically the onus lies on the developed countries because they have actually contributed more in overall deterioration of the climate over a period of time. And that's why the onus still lies on them. But in Copenhagen, as a responsible country, India also announced to have a national action plan on climate change. And then subsequently in the Paris Agreement, COP21, when we had given a bold statement by telling that we will be having 175 gigawatt grid connected electricity generation capacity by 2022. And ultimately in the COP6, the Convention of Parties 26 in Glasgow, we had announced that by 2070, our country will be net zero emitting country. And by 2030, we will be able to have a capacity of 500 gigawatt from non-fossil based power generation system. So that's all was the history. And in the National Action Plan on Climate Change, in which the 8 missions were specifically announced, the first 2 missions were addressing the energy aspect. The first being the National Solar Mission. Though at that time, if you go through the document of National Solar Mission, the solar was treated as a generic term in terms of renewable. But ultimately, it's the monitorable target which was set of having 20 gigawatt by 2022 solar electricity generation capacity within the country. And that's why everybody have been starting talking about the solar only, and it became really a solar mission. And the other was the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency, because energy saved is energy produced. That was the motto basically of this enhanced energy efficiency. And there were other missions also, like National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, which also focus something on energy efficiency, in a sense that we have been talking about the green buildings, energy efficient buildings, and using the natural light, those type of arrangements within the our building codes and all that. And we were also mentioning about the water mission, of which, of course, the hydro and all those were also the part of that. And particularly the waste management became the part of the sustainable habitat and the water mission. And through waste, generating energy in the form of maybe the high rate biomethanism. Those were the part of that. So in a sense that ultimately all these 8 missions, one way or other, have been addressing the energy aspect. So our focus was both on the mitigation aspect, in which the carbon emission mitigation was the focus, and also the adaptation strategy, means whatever situation have arisen because of the deterioration of the climate condition, how to adapt that situation, what should be our strategy to adapt and accept that and become ourselves prepared for meeting any calamity and all those things. So those were the focus of the climate nature. So in a sense, the National Solar Mission, which was formally launched on 11th January 2010, was aimed to establish India the global leader in solar energy, and we are still a long way to go to achieve that position, though our progress in this is significant and internationally acclaimed. About 500 trillion kilowatt hour, which is our basically the incident radiation over our land, and within this, and we have to harness this both ways, means the using the solar thermal and solar photovoltaics technology. In the solar thermal particularly, our focus was practically to meet the process heat requirement, though ultimately now we have more been talking about electricity only when we talk about the energy. Unfortunately, we start with energy, but ultimately reach to the talk about electricity only. So now ultimately the focus is totally on the solar photovoltaic route. A bit efforts have been made on solar thermal, but there are certain technical issues of using the solar thermal, particularly for the power generation, because our direct normal incidence is not that good. Means the direct radiation which are falling on Earth, that is not good because of the maybe the pollution aspect. The direct radiations get scattered, and for the solar thermal application for high grade heat, you require the concentrator, and for concentrating it is necessary that the sun rays fall on directly on the collector area, and then it gets focused on either at line focusing or the point focusing method. So because of the diffuse radiation, that part is not that good, and that's why this solar thermal for power generation is not being pursued that vigorously as is being pursued through solar photovoltaic route. And off-grid decentralized and low temperature application still prevails, and meeting the other energy needs for power and heating and cooling for both rural and urban area. That was the broad goal actually, and monitorable goal at that time was the 20 gigawatt solar power generation capacity addition by 2022, which was thought to be a very humongous task at that time. And there were doubt about whether we would be able to achieve that by that time. So the mission, the initial document said that it should be divided in 3 phases. The first phase was to achieve 1000 megawatt or 1 gigawatt capacity by 2013, and another 3 gigawatt by 2017. And whatever experience we would be gaining through this process, we would be able to achieve by 10 gigawatt by 2017, and ultimately the 20 gigawatt by 2022. So that was the whole exercise. The major challenge at that time was because we hardly had any experience at that time of having grid connected solar electricity, and the cost of per unit electricity at that time was estimated to be something around rupees 19. So there were number of policy measures at that time thought of. There were number of experiments were done, and one of the experiments which was done at that time was to bundle the solar power, solar electricity, generated solar electricity with the thermal power electricity, so that the cost get averaged out. So if maybe the cost of 19 rupee and the cost of solar photovoltaic and the cost of solar thermal at that time was something around 4 rupee 50 paisa, which is still of that order. So the average cost would be something around 6 to 7 rupees, something like that was the idea. And the second thing was to identify certain areas where we can have a centralized solar power generation capacity and announce that we will be able to get 1000 gigawatt within 3 years. So this gave an economy of scale, and what we said, the tariff-based reverse bidding was announced at that time, wherein the developers were said that you have a clear market of 1 gigawatt within 3 years. And if that is the capacity addition you have to do, and the tariff, what we have been telling is something around 16, 17 rupee per unit. So now you tell that how much reduction in this tariff you can bring if this much of capacity addition is to be done within, means the market is clearly available. So that was the thought process. And immediately in the first bid which happened at that time, the cost was reduced to 12 rupee. And ultimately with the bundling with the thermal power, it had come down to something around 6 to 7 rupees. So that was the policy initial thrust given for renewable, and whatever experience we have gained, actually, particularly the Gujarat took initiative in this, and they immediately started having something around 6,000 megawatt capacity by 2013. At that time, of course, of our present Prime Minister, who happened to be the Chief Minister of Gujarat at that time. So when ultimately this all happened, and there was a government change in our country, so we again thought, and a target was given to us to achieve 175 gigawatt by 2022. That was really a very challenging target, which was given by Honorable Prime Minister, and announced this boldly in the Paris Climate Convention. And we committed that we would reduce the emission intensity of the GDP by 33 to 35% from the 2005 level. And we will have 40% electric power installed capacity from clean energy sources by 2030. So that was 2015. And we already have surpassed this 40% generation capacity if we take the large hydro also into consideration in 2022 itself. So in that 175 gigawatt, the solar has a specific target of 100 gigawatt to be achieved by the December 2022, which we are already in the process to achieve. Actually, we already have reached something around 59-60 gigawatt as on today, and there are number of projects which are already in pipeline at various stages of commissioning. In wind, we have to achieve by 60 gigawatt. We already are somewhere around 40 gigawatt as of today. In biomass and small hydro, we already have achieved our target of 10 gigawatt and 5 gigawatt respectively. So the focus now is totally on solar and wind. As far as the biomass and small hydro is concerned, that biomass is being now thought on different line, that the biomass pellets are now being made mandatorily to be used in the thermal power stations located in and around NCR region, means 10% of the total fuel being consumed by these thermal power stations. The 10% should be from biomass pellets, particularly produced from Parali. So there is already a mission going on that. That's the stage. As far as the progress, our progress is concerned, we already are the 4th largest installed renewable energy capacity. Our installed RE capacity, that is 146 megawatt. In fact, this is the old figure. We are way beyond this today. And world's 5th largest solar installed capacity. It's again the old figure 45,200, but now we are somewhere around 59 gigawatt capacity. And world's 4th largest installed capacity, something around 40 gigawatts. So that's the present scenario. And other renewable energy, as I have already mentioned, then the biomass is small hydro. We already have achieved whatever that we were given the target. So there is a lot of developments which have taken place during last 7 to 8 years in this field. But associated and parallelly, the tariff was also reduced. Now the solar tariff comes to be something around 1.99 to 2.5 rupees per unit. And the wind is also something around 2.77. So in a sense, the tariff parity, which was we were expecting that we would be able to achieve by 2025 or something at that time in 2008 when we launched the National Action Plan on Climate Change, have already been achieved. And in fact, now there are bulk power consumers like the metros and the steel plants and the cement plants, any IT industries. They are preferring to have their own solar power generation capacity in various energy parks being set up within the country. So all this, there were different policy measures which were being taken. One of them was the renewable purchase obligation. The renewable purchase obligation was something like that the bulk consumer of the electricity, like the discoms or the steel industry or the cement industry or the metros, railways, they were obligated to buy certain percentage of their electricity from the power generation generated from renewable energy sources like the solar, wind, biomass, or the small hydro. And for solar, there is another solar power purchase agreement, means obligation, which also announced. So these policy measures actually helped in development of this sector. And now there were so many other policy measures taken by the government in which the standard bidding guidelines, because the discoms or the various state governments have been giving their own bidding, starting their own bidding process. So there should be a standard bidding guideline which was announced by the government of India, and the payment security mechanism, which is very important thing, because the discoms otherwise do not pay to the GenCos on time, and it affects particularly to the nascent industry like the solar developers. Their financial position might have been deteriorated, and that's why the payment security mechanism was announced, in which a certain coffer was kept with the Solar Energy Corporation of India. And if there is a delay in making the payment by the discoms or the bulk purchasers to the GenCo, So the certain amount of that is given as a help to them, and it was again replenished. So that mechanism was there. And the another thing, ultimately, when we started our career in 1984, we were thinking these renewable energy sources being a decentralized sources, so we should generate the electricity or we should generate the energy where it is needed, actually. But ultimately, it has become, it is now being developed as a conventional source of thing, wherein we have been generating electricity, bulk electricity at a particular place, like in the solar park, we have a capacity of something around 1 gigawatt, 2 gigawatt, 5 gigawatt capacity, generation capacity in a particular solar park. And from there, ultimately, it is to go to the huge point. So the interstate transmission charges, which our Transco used to charge, this was also waived. So that is another policy measure which was taken. And there was the dispute resolution mechanism. It is again a very important thing, the dispute resolution, in a sense that I have committed to means if I am a Genco and I'll say that I'll feed so much of electricity tomorrow, but I am not able to do that because of certain conditions like the cloud or anything, then there may be certain dispute. So how to resolve that? So these are certain the policy measures which have been taken. Why I am telling all these things, that while the technology is one part of that, technology development and the efficiency increase and all that, the science aspect, the policy aspects ultimately becomes the driving force to bring it the technological advancements into the actual use. If the proper policies are not made at the right time, the technology penetration, actually, that doesn't become that easy. So that's why so many of the initiatives which we have taken at the government level. So this is ultimately what we were supposed to achieve. And I had already mentioned that what we have done so far. So the 100 gigawatt RE capacity installed, over 25% of the installed capacity, that was there. The 50 gigawatt is under implementation. These are again bit old thing. And there are another measures like the foreign direct investment up to 100% under automatic route. Means any foreign entity, if you want to have a renewable energy project in our country, they can bid for it and they can set up their own power station. And parallelly also, they can also have their own manufacturing facility here. And under the PLI scheme, of which I'll be talking some later in my later slide, they are again also being given some, means the 100% foreign direct investment is allowed in this. Then interstate transmission, as I have already mentioned, the RPO trajectory, we clearly know that what will be the mandatory purchase of the electricity by the bulk consumers. So this RPO trajectory has already been formed. But all these things are actually bringing certain challenges also, because now ultimately we are going to have 500 gigawatt of non-fossil energy capacity by 2030. These are the five what our Honorable Prime Minister had mentioned in Glasgow, are the five Panch Tattva, basically Panchashil again, in that line to achieve the target of net zero by 2070 and non-fossil energy capacity to reach 500 gigawatt by 2030 and 50% of the energy requirement for RE by 2030 and projected carbon emission to reduce by 1 billion ton by 2030 and emission intensity of GDP to reduce by 45% by 2030 of 2005 level. So these are the 5 goals which are to be achieved. And for that, different measures are being taken. Particularly, one of the major challenges which we have been facing actually is that while we have good module manufacturing capacity, we do not have the cell manufacturing capacity. And that's why the efforts are now being made that the solar PV manufacturing in India be also become the integral part of our developmental process. So there is a scheme which is called the PLI scheme, Performance Linked Incentive Scheme for high efficiency solar cell and modules fabrication. This was announced in April 2021. There are certain modifications have already announced in the last cabinet meeting on this, which allows certain more type of manufacturers to come and set up their PV module cells and modules manufacturing capacity, which is not only for cells and modules. Basically, it starts from what we say silicon ingot to wafer to cell to module manufacturing. So that's basically the overall thing basically in the line which we are now going ahead, and we feel that by 2030 we will be able to export actually the our PV cells and modules. We will have that much of capacity. So that's what is the total process basically in which we have been going. So these are on the small hydro. Of course, we already have reached to up to 5 gigawatt capacity. This sector to some extent is not getting that much of attention which it should have got. But still, yes, that's also the part of the development. In the 100 gigawatt, what we have been mentioning actually to be achieved by 2022, the 60 gigawatt was supposed to come from large solar park sort of projects, and 40 gigawatt was supposed to come from rooftop solar. Our rooftop solar progress was not that significant earlier, but it has now gained pace, and so many now the individuals have started setting up their own solar power plant, and from consumer, every individual is now thinking to become a prosumer now. So while all these things are going on, there is another scheme called the PM Kusum scheme, in which the farmers are being incentivized to set up solar irrigation facility as well as to solar power generation capacity, and the excess power generated by them can be fed to the grid so that the farmers can have the additional income by way of selling their electricity to the discoms, and this will help in increasing their income. And to facilitate all this, means if this much of capacity is being added on daily basis, then naturally the grid congestion becomes an issue, and that's why a separate dedicated corridor called the Green Energy Corridor to address the transmission issue is also being laid actually within the country. as part of the green energy corridor project being implemented by Power Grid Corporation with our ministry support. And while all these things are happening, we have also been mentioning about National Green Hydrogen Mission. We also have been talking about how to manage the solar waste. But there are certain challenges basically which we have to look into. You look at these two graphs basically. This is the load curve of peak day April to June. In fact, the electricity consumption, it is not a static subject, it's a dynamic subject, because your base load that changes actually minute to minute. And if you look at from April to June, usually the peak comes at in the evening, or sometimes in the maybe at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. While in the month of July to September, the peak again is at that time. And at daytime, you see that the load is not that much. And our solar generation capacity, then it is again in December, January, and February, March. If you see that the generation or the our base load pattern is changing. And accordingly, now if we look at in the conventional system, like the coal-based conventional system, it is possible actually to enhance or reduce your generation capacity depending upon how the your load curve is changing. But in renewable, the major challenge is that we expect, particularly from solar, that the generation will be something like this. It will be a bell-shaped thing in a day. This is a real graph of a 12 kilowatt solar power plant set up in Noida of 27th May 2020. So we expect that this thing will happen. But ultimately, what happens is this. On 31st May, we got this thing. So this is at a micro level. In this small level, it is possible actually to manage all these things. But if it happens at a macro level, if we have a capacity of something around 300 gigawatt by 2030 solar, and such situation arise, then our grid will become unstable. And that's why it is necessary to think that how to address, means at the time at maybe 12 o'clock, if against the 100 gigawatt capacity by December, what we are expecting, if 80 gigawatt is coming from solar and something around 150 to 200 gigawatt is coming from thermal, our total generation will be something around 280 gigawatt. And our load at that time is something around 210 gigawatt. So this 70 gigawatt additional capacity which we will have at that time, what to do of that? So it is necessary to have certain what we say an artificial load sort of thing to address. Otherwise your frequency may go up and your grid may become unstable. Or maybe suddenly a cloud cover comes at that time and your 100 gigawatt capacity may reduce to, means the 80 gigawatt capacity which was being generated at a particular time reduced to maybe a 40 gigawatt. Then how to address that issue? So these are certain challenges which needs to be addressed. And to address these challenges, we have been talking about storage. We have been talking about the green hydrogen. All these things are part of the overall energy scenario. Because if we will have the national electric mobility, as we have been mentioning that by 2030, at least our commercial fleet, most of our commercial fleet will be through electric vehicles. So these electric vehicles will act as also as a load, and sometimes they may also act as your generator. So that type of arrangement is being thought in to have by way of setting up the charging mechanism at different places. So the electric vehicle, while will be addressing our clean environment goal, it will also address some of the challenges which may arise in due course of time with the large penetration of the renewable power, particularly the solar power in our overall generation capacity. So ultimately, the objective of the electric vehicle mission is to reduce the primary oil consumption in transportation and ultimately to reduce our dependence from the import. But one of the aspect is also to address basically the grid stability or the grid congestion aspect, which is going to be a major challenge if not being addressed properly from today itself. Of course, the Central Electricity Authority have already been working on that. We already have come up with a working paper on that. National Storage Mission is being also launched. But there are the technological advancements which are being taken into consideration as on today. So having a large charging infrastructure within the country, increasing the efficiency of the vehicles, selecting appropriate battery chemistry, and to develop our own manufacturing capacity, particularly in the modern battery, because we have been talking about lithium, and lithium is to be imported again. So we will again be dependent upon the outside sources. So if we can go from lithium to sodium, or maybe some other type of technology like the flow batteries and all those, or the zinc air batteries, those type of new developments in the storage side are being now planned, and the research projects are being sanctioned to the academic institutions to work on that. The IIT Roorkee or IIT Kharagpur, IIT Bombay, they have been working at the Cochin University. They have been working on all these aspects. So exploring the new battery chemistry, that is also being thought of. And of course, the National Hydrogen Mission, as I have already mentioned, that while the hydrogen is already being used as a fuel and or for various applications, but that is not the green hydrogen. So ultimately, the excess electricity being generated at a particular time can be used to produce hydrogen, and that can be stored and can be used both for the thermal as well as the power generation application, as also for the transport fuel. And in fact, some pilot projects are already going on. In Delhi itself, there is a hydrogen blending with the CNG is already being tried. So in our National Institute of Solar Energy also, we have started working on that. The Indian Oil Corporation has also been working on this green hydrogen production methodology. And green hydrogen not only as part of the electrolysis, but also if we can use some biological means to extract carbon from the hydrocarbon and decarbonize the hydrocarbon and use the hydrogen. So work is also going on that direction. So there are as I mentioned, that there are a number of challenges which we have to address. One of the major challenge always be the intermittent nature of renewable energy. And there will always be a demand and supply mismatch. Supply mismatch in a sense because the generation in renewable energy is not in our hand, because the fuel for renewable, particularly the solar and wind, depends upon nature. Whenever the radiation will be there, then only the electricity generation will be there, and that will depend upon what is the intensity of that radiation. And that's why the supply may be there, but the demand may not be there, or there may be some situation wherein the demand will be there, but the supply will not be there. particularly if we look at the position of something around 4 o'clock in the evening, when our peak demand starts generating, at that time the solar immediately dips. So to what extent we will be able to use the storage mechanism to address, to shift the load from maybe peak generation to when the solar generation is not there, that needs to be seen. So what should be the capacity, how it is to become the part of the main grid, or whether this storage is to be done at the energy park level, or it is to be done at the user end, or it is to be done by used by discoms. All these things are now being tried in the pilot form at different places. To how to ensure power supply through renewable energy in the 24-hour domain, energy congestion of the grid, because if the grid capacity is not there, then how to address ultimately, can we think of pump storage, can we think of compressed air, and use the hollow mine fields wherein to compress the air there and then extract the pressurized air to generate electricity and use it. Can we think on that? Can we think of having liquid air also as a storage mechanism? So these are all possibilities which are now being worked on and will have to become the part of the overall scenario, as the renewable have already become the part of our overall electricity system. We also have to make our storage mechanism, and storage is not limited to batteries only. There are different means, basically different methods of storage which are to be tried. So vision to have 450 gigawatt, that was the exclusive renewable capacity, but 500 gigawatt non-fossil fuel based capacity by 2030 have to address all these things. So these are the challenges, and you being in this academics and research field, these are some of the emerging areas on which you can think of developing your projects and start working on this. So that's what I had to say. I'm open for any comments or any questions. Welcome for that.
Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful talk that is on journey on renewable energy sources of India. It's great to hear from you, as it is you are not only the witness of it, but you played a major role on it. So definitely it's very nice to hear this from you. And now the session is open for the participants. If they have any query, they can ask. They can raise their hands or send the question and answer session. You can also send your questions also.
Yeah, from Mr. Dr. Arni Gupta. I'll share this presentation with the coordinators and they may pass it on to the participants. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So till the time other participants are getting ready for asking their queries, just to save the time, I also have a query on your session, sir. It was a wonderful talk, and we are really blessed to hear you in this inaugural session. So like you already told us that in case of solar photovoltaics, yeah, or a rooftop installation of the solar systems, though we trust in this system, but still in India, there is a kind of hesitation in the public in accepting it as a substitute, and substitute for the conventional energy supply or electrical energy. And maybe issues are regarding like payback time of the system and all. So what will be your opinion on that point, sir?
See, the solar has started getting acceptance from the public now. See, one thing is very clear. Our base load will continue to be based on the existing system, that is the coal-based system. Okay. Slowly, when the challenges which I had mentioned in my presentation, if they will be properly addressed, then we will be slowly shifting towards maybe having, if not 100%, but significant capacity utilization. Okay, but as far as using solar for means, as on today, when the rooftop solar we have been mentioning, in the rooftop solar is a sort of you generate the electricity, you give it to the DISCOM. Okay, part of that you use for yourself, which is basically addressed as a credit to your account. And remaining whatever you have been giving to the DISCOM, they put it as a balance with them. And
Thank you, sir. Any other? Hello.
शायद कवरेज का इशू है सर के साथ।
Yes, sir. Might be there is a network issue with sir.
और कोई क्वेश्चन किसी का क्वेरीज है? ये फंडिंग एजेंसी का क्वेश्चन है।
Yes, sir. We are calling to sir.
hello,
Please
am I
share.
audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there is some issue in what is it? Internet connection is unstable. Maybe some aspect.
Maybe, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
No problem, sir.
Now it's okay.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Sir, one more question in this chat box. That is, there is any specific government funding source provided for solar mission?
Pardon? For?
Sir, there is any specific government funding source provided for solar mission?
Solar mission?
Yes, sir. For funding aspects, projects.
No, funding aspect is already there because there are so many incentives which are being announced by some of them. I have already mentioned here, like if you want to go for rooftop solar, then if for 3 kilowatt plant, you will be getting something around 40% of subsidy, and from 3 kilowatt to 10 kilowatt means additional 7 kilowatt capacity, you'll be getting 20% incentive. So that's already, there are so many other incentives basically which are being announced to the different players, like the PLI scheme in the manufacturing sector. So if somebody wants to have a manufacturing capacity, then he will get some performance link, but whatever generation they have done, means whatever production they have done, part of that will be subsidized by government so that it becomes economically or the financially viable to the purchaser. So number of measures are being taken. Yeah.
I think this question is also for that projects, research projects.
Yeah, research project, there is already an R&D scheme. You can go to the ministry's website, and even DST is also supporting a lot of, if you are going for the basic research, perhaps the DST is a better funding agency, DST and CSIR, but our ministry has also been supporting, particularly on the applied side. Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
really so informative. So many schemes and missions introduced by the government become half the idea. Our research group is working on solar cells and rechargeable batteries.
Pardon?
Like our research group is also working on rechargeable batteries,
Okay.
solar cells and all, like from BHU and from Delhi University, from IIT Delhi. My query is like everybody is asking about renewable energy, and we are developing so many solar panels. But what about the discard, or you can say retirement of these panels? Because once they retire, it's very difficult for the nature.
No, that's really a very challenging thing because see, ultimately what happens, it's only 10 years and we think that something around 25 years is the life. So 15 years margin is already there, and there are so many groups which have been working actually how to extract some of the materials from it to be used at later stage, or what could be the best mechanism for waste management, just like in our electronic waste management system. Some system will be developed in due course of time. It's not that that is not there in the mind of the policymakers, as you might have seen, because the time was not there, so I could not elaborate all those things. That's a part of my presentation also.
Yeah, that's why I go to, that's why I asked the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ruchi Lodhi want to ask question. Ma'am, you can switch on your audio and video.
Okay. Sir, my question is basically various funding agencies are being provided in the labs in the form of projects also. But in case of rural areas, if in the rural areas, people try to do some of the projects, then for that specific government is providing some sort of amount. Because in labs or rural areas, there is no provision of something specific labs, dignified instruments. In that case, some funding source is there.
Actually, your question is related. It's not. I mean, the rural area, particularly if you look at that, it's more on the application side, and that's why we put it on the innovation side. So there are so many initiatives which we have taken, like our this IIM Ahmedabad. We have created a fund called Indian Fund for Sustainable Energy, INFUGE. Okay, wherein the government of India has given 25 crores rupees, and they have ultimately made a offer of something around 150 crore. From that, actually, they have been supporting such type of projects. Okay, so this comes the part of maybe, or they can take help from the Atal Innovation Mission, or there are so many innovative things which are being done at the rural area, and they are being supported through our innovation program. Okay, perhaps Mr. Yogesh perhaps may put some light on that in the subsequent lecture. I was looking at your schedule actually, but ultimately these become the part of the innovation program.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Just about the question raised by Dr. Ruchi, the Technology Development Board also supports such type of projects. So you can think of taking help from them also. Technology Development Board of DST, Department of Science and Technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So, since no query is there now, I request the head of the department physics, Dr. Uttam Sharma sir, to propose vote of thanks. Over to Sharma.
Thank you, madam. On behalf of Shri Vaishnav Vidyapit Vishwavidyalaya, Shri Vaishnav Institute of Science and Department of Physics, I would like to welcome our chief guest and resource person of this 5-day FDPs on the theme Present and Future of Functional Materials towards Renewable Energy Sources from 26th to 30th of September 2022. So first of all, I would like to thank our chief guest and resource person of the inauguration session, Dr. Pradeep Chandra Pant sir, for sparing his valuable time and giving us an excellent and remarkable presentation. And to now we are much more aware about the facilities and the opportunities in the field of renewable energy, especially in the solar field. So we are very thankful to you from our department and university. I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Upinder Dhar, for giving us a constant motivation to conduct such type of FDPs. I would like to thank our Director, Dr. K. Guru Prasad sir, for always motivating and helping us to conduct such innovative ideas and faculty development programs. I would like to thank convener of this faculty development program, Dr. Amit Saxena, who has come forward along with the coordinators, Dr. Nitu Kataria and Dr. Pragya Palod, for coming out with an excellent idea of this renewable energy source, which is a recent and thrust area for the society. So thanks to all my colleagues from the departmental colleagues for operating them. Thanks to all the participants across the country for participating in this 5 days faculty development program. I hope that you will be enriched with a lot of knowledge throughout 5 days. So thanks you once again, Pansab. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And once again, thanks to all the chief guests, sir, dignitaries, and participants for joining with us. Today's second session on innovation and technology, the way forward, by Mr. Yogesh Kumar Singh from Reddington Limited, New Delhi, which is associated with MNRE, will start at sharp 3 p.m. So timely joining with all the participants is highly appreciable. So please be with us at 3 p.m. Thank you very much, sir. So after a short break, we'll gather at 3 p.m.
Thank you, Paul, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Uttam, sir. Chalo.